President Reagan was right when he declared that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Here in the United States, we must uphold free speech and zealously guard against censorship. Earlier this month, I convened a hearing to examine how our own government, particularly the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, censored in secret, often through third parties. CISA and White House officials jawboned big tech into deleting tweets, downranking posts, and deplatforming conservatives under the guise of, quote, safety and national security.
In a world where words can be silenced with the click of a button, the fight for free speech has never been more urgent. From the writings of George Orwell to the founding fathers who risked everything to speak truth to power, the message remains the same. When speech dies, freedom follows. Today, inside the U.S. Senate, that warning echoes once again. Allegations of government pressure, tech companies bending the knee, and citizens silenced for daring to question the narrative. This isn't fiction. This is America, 2025. And the question before the nation is simple. Who decides what you're allowed to say? Welcome to Behind the Podium.
Good morning. The Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation will come to order. In 1984, George Orwell chillingly explored how the control of speech is the control of the mind. In describing this world, Orwell powerfully demonstrated how an authoritarian government can suppress the ability of a person to speak, dissent, and think in order to control its people. Long before Orwell, our founding fathers recognized this threat as well. After witnessing a long train of abuses and usurpations by the British Crown, including the suppression of speech and thought, 56 men signed the Declaration of Independence, speaking out in defense of man's natural rights and beginning the formation of a new, free nation built upon one's ability to speak and dissent against the government. The American founders knew all too well that being unable to speak out against government encroachment of your rights ensures the loss of those rights. The right to speak out is the foundation of a free society. It gives everyone, whether a senator or a citizen, a contrarian or a comedian, the power to persuade and to hold government accountable. And that's why all of us need to defend and protect the most powerful weapon we have against the government's ability to censor its own citizens, the First Amendment. Censorship around the world is growing. Even allies like the United Kingdom are making arrests for so-called offensive speech, like criticism of open borders and peaceful prayer near abortion clinics. President Reagan was right when he declared that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Here in the United States, we must uphold free speech and zealously guard against censorship. Earlier this month, I convened a hearing to examine how our own government, particularly the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, censored in secret, often through third parties. CISA and White House officials jawboned big tech into deleting tweets, downranking posts, and deplatforming conservatives under the guise of, quote, safety and national security. We heard the stories of Alex Berenson and Sean Davis, who were personally targeted by the Biden administration apparatchiks for opinions and facts they shared on COVID and election fraud. They not only suffered significant financial loss, but more importantly, they were silenced by their own government. Today, we pick off where the story left off, with witnesses from two big tech companies that were pressured by the Biden administration to censor the American people, Google and Meta. Today, these same companies claim to zealously advocate for free speech. While I welcome their newfound religious conversion, they owe apologies to Alex Berenson, to Sean Davis, and to countless Americans they silenced at the Biden administration's behest. No major tech company, let alone the ones before us, publicly spoke out when this was happening. They were silent. Despite armies of lobbyists and legal resources without limit, big tech was speechless when the Biden White House bullied them into censoring regular citizens. Neither big tech nor any of my Democrat colleagues spoke up. They seemed quite content to follow the example of the United Kingdom, criminalizing speech that some find offensive under the guise of, quote, misinformation. But the fact is, the government cannot, or at least should not, be the arbiter of truth. You don't get to decide free speech protections are available only to favored or popular speech. It's not up to bureaucrats and politicians to decide which speech is reasonable and which is hateful, and then only accept that speech that they find to be socially acceptable and inoffensive. You don't get to cancel someone for using the wrong pronouns or challenging conventional wisdom on vaccines. No, our commitment to free speech under the rule of law means protecting speech that some people find unreasonable or offensive or even hateful. So what does that mean in practice? Alex Berenson and Sean Davis can prove that the Biden administration was behind their online censorship, yes, but they still face significant legal obstacles in recouping their losses. Their stories, and countless others like them, have revealed dangerous gaps in our legal protections for free speech. It cannot be that their First Amendment rights go unremedied merely because the violators are no longer in office or because Congress has withheld a damages remedy. This collusion between big government and big tech is a warning that we need stronger tools to guard our cherished freedoms. That's why I will soon introduce new legislation, the Jawbone Act, which will provide a robust right to redress when Americans are targeted by their own government. I am hopeful that today's hearing will reflect bipartisan interest in protecting free speech and finding common ground on measures like this one. We cannot remain idle in the face of government agencies manipulating private companies into silencing their critics. We must act decisively to uphold the First Amendment, to protect open debate, and to defend every American's right to speak freely without fear of government reprisal. I'll now turn to Ranking Member Cantwell.
Freedom of speech, the very heartbeat of democracy, is under scrutiny once again. In Washington, a new storm is brewing inside the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. The topic? The growing alliance between big government and big tech, and the price ordinary citizens pay when their voices are silenced in the digital age. From the echoes of George Orwell's 1984 to the words penned by the Founding Fathers, this hearing reminds the nation that controlling speech has always been the first step toward controlling thought. The framers of America understood this danger all too well. They saw how tyranny begins when dissent is punished and silence becomes safety. That's why they enshrined the First Amendment not as a privilege but as a promise. Yet today, that promise stands tested. The hearing opened with a stark warning that even in free nations, censorship can wear many disguises, from safety to national security, from fact-checking to misinformation. Behind those noble labels, some argue, lies a coordinated effort to filter what Americans can see, say, and believe. The senator leading this charge pointed to a troubling revelation, that officials from the Biden administration, through agencies like the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, allegedly pressured major platforms like Google and Meta to remove or downrank content that challenged government narratives. Tweets deleted, posts buried, voices deplatformed, all in the name of public trust. Among those silenced, names like Alex Berenson and Sean Davis stand out, journalists and commentators who say they were targeted not for spreading hate, but for questioning authority. Their livelihoods took the hit, their platforms disappeared, and their message was clear. If the government can silence a journalist, it can silence anyone. The hearing laid bare an uncomfortable truth. When the state and Silicon Valley work hand in hand to decide what is true, the very spirit of democracy erodes. Because free speech is not designed to protect the popular, the polished, or the politically safe. It's meant to protect the unpopular, the controversial, and even the offensive, because that is where real freedom lives. As one senator noted, the government cannot be the arbiter of truth. You don't get to cancel someone for using the wrong words or questioning the accepted story. Freedom means hearing ideas you disagree with. It means defending the right of your opponent to speak, not because you support their words, but because you support their right to say them. Yet, in the age of algorithms and digital gatekeepers, that ideal grows harder to defend. The platforms that once promised to connect the world have become silent referees of public opinion. Their code decides whose voice rises and whose disappears into the noise. And when government pressure enters the equation, the line between private moderation and state censorship begins to blur. This is the crossroads America faces. Out of this concern comes a new proposal, the Jawbone Act, a piece of legislation designed to create accountability and give citizens the right to seek redress when their speech is stifled by government influence. It's an attempt to restore balance between free expression and responsible governance, to ensure that no administration, present or future, can quietly erase dissent through corporate compliance. But the challenge runs deeper than laws or hearings. It's about a national mindset. Are we willing to protect speech even when it makes us uncomfortable? Are we brave enough to allow debate even when it defies the mainstream? Because history has shown that every generation must re-earn its freedom. President Reagan once said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction." And in this digital generation, that battle may not be fought on the streets or in the courts, but on the screens we hold in our hands. This hearing is not just about two journalists or two companies. It's about every American, from the comedian testing boundaries, to the student questioning policy, to the citizen daring to speak against power. It's about defending the right to think freely, even when others demand silence. As the committee's gavel struck to close the session, one truth hung in the air. Democracy doesn't die in a single act of tyranny. It fades through quiet compliance, through people too afraid to speak and institutions too comfortable to resist. And so, the question returns. Who decides what you're allowed to say? The government, the algorithm, or you? Because in the end, free speech is not just a right, it's a responsibility, a duty to question, to challenge, and to defend the marketplace of ideas, no matter how messy it becomes. The voices that shaped America were never safe or silent. They were loud, inconvenient, and fearless. And if freedom is to survive, that's exactly what we must remain.